Then he pushes it and blows the ship up. I
Oh,
mean, I really am glad they put this much humor in the episode, um, because, and I'm going to shift the gears. It played the yin to the yang to Echo story, and Echo this is Echo story was very hard to digest in this episode because we have somebody who was one of the best of the clones who had been captured, tortured, and mutilated by the enemy, now rescued back with his brothers, trying to figure out where he fits in. Because he no longer looks like all of his brothers. He's got the mechanical arm, he's got all the scars of his battle there, and you see him just kind of wrestling through his identity in this episode. And even you see the Jedi and Rex and even the Bad Batch trying to figure out whether they can still trust him. Rex wants to, and Rex is probably the only one who really 100% believes in Echo, but everybody else is struggling to believe and trust him because they don't know whether he's just a pawn of the separatist or what. Um, David, I'm sure you probably have some interesting thoughts on this.
oh,
What is your opinion of Echo's story in this and everything he had to deal with?
well, right. And of course, last week you and I did double duty. We were on with Dan on the Coffee with Kenobi, reviewing the last episode on the Wings of Caradax, and we talked at the end there about PTSD. I talked about that, and then Dan brought up that interesting issue of is it kind of like a sleeper agent inside of Echo, and they left that open. That's part of why I said in my initial thoughts I didn't just mention action and humor and even the feels, but even the intrigue. And I was curious to see in this episode how he would do. Um, at the very beginning of this episode, you see outside of their what is it, Fort and Axis, and you see Wrecker, or forgive me, not Wrecker. You see Echo on a little transport with a medical droid, and they're dropping him off to then go and talk to Mace and Anakin. And so, I'd mentioned, the stuff about PTSD symptomatology. They didn't really show that in this, him having, flashbacks to being inside of that torture chamber there with the Techno Union. It really showed him actually recovering very quickly. And, I started thinking about it. Maybe that's the best thing for him. And that's really what they show, that he really wanted to be part, where he says it at the very beginning there, I want to be a part of a Republic victory, not a Republic defeat. So he kept himself busy, really held it together. And I think really had that sense of pride at the end, in terms of helping those brothers. I was thinking Rex too. You made a really interesting point that, Rex was the only one, and it was neat to see Rex model that. And I go back to that Citadel arc. I think we all went back and watched that and saw where Echo theoretically ended in that explosion. And even Rex says it at the end. He goes, listen, Echo, you and I go a long way back. More than Rex has with Bad Batch. So I love Rex trusting his gut and seeing Echo come through. That's what I was saying. It just was the feels at the end there, seeing him join the Bad Batch. It's so much better than a sad ending. And so, yes, piggybacking off that last episode, I agree with you 100%. The humor was so needed to balance out, Echo's story.
It well said. It really was, and I love something that D. Bradley Baker, of course, who voices Rex, Echo, and all the clones. He said that a really wonderful element of the Bad Batch story of this 4-part arc is Rex reconnecting with Echo, Echo reconnecting with his humanity, and then how that story plays out, which is quite emotional. I got choked up at the end of the arc. This is a story that it choked a lot of people up. It even choked D. Bradley Baker, who had the script in front of him, recording the lines. It
Yes.
choked him up watching this, dealing with this story as well. I mean, because how many times do we see in the news, and we hear stories on social media of soldiers and veterans who have been through these type of situations, where they have come back, where they're wounded, lost a limb, they have PTSD, like you mentioned, and we hear all these tragic stories that they go through, and then to see it's one thing to hear those stories. It's another thing to see those stories and experience it. And I think, and I love this arc because, in my opinion, this takes a element of today's society that everybody wants to fix, but nobody really knows, nobody really talks about it, and puts it forefront in everybody's mind, because here it is in Star Wars, right there in your face.
Yeah.
These people, they're people. They can fit back in. And at the end, yes, Rex, the Echo is back in his armor. He's back fighting, and he knows he doesn't fit in where he used to be, but he has found where he does fit in, and he joins the Bad Batch, and leaves with them. And I love how Rex just tells him, he goes, "You know where you belong. You're our brother, but you know where you belong. And if you feel you belong with them, that's not an issue. You need to go and be with them." And I love how he just encouraged and constantly built up Echo, and was there for Echo no matter what. And that made an impact, and I think aided Echo in his recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's why at the end, when Rex is talking to Echo, I started just getting the feels right there, and the support he was giving him. Hey, we're gonna love you if you're with us. We'll love you if you decide to be with them, because we are really truly all brothers. And then to see him, and then when he salutes Rex, and the rest of the Bad Batch salute Rex, oh my gosh! Like people, if they've ever listened to our previous podcasts, and even this one, I've never shied away from. I just get the feels, and I'll cry, and I just teared up and was just losing water, seeing that. I just loved it. I loved the show of respect towards each other. And like you said, Aaron, here they are, dealing with a difficult subject, and he is moving towards healing, and he's accepted. He is not shunned or considered not a part of society, but conceivably he's going to go on to some other big adventures with Bad Batch, and go from there. But that just them saluting Rex and Rex saluting them. Oh my gosh, I lost it, but loved it.
Oh, I did too. It was the whole arc was great, and this episode really was the perfect tie up to the arc, because it told a story that we all kind of knew the story. Like I said, this arc was released in the storyboard format, and animated story reel 5 years ago. Was it 5 years ago?
I think so, yeah, because season 6 was released 2014, to Netflix.
Yeah.
And then we didn't get any more after that. That was season 6. So yeah, so 5 years ago, maybe.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yeah.
I'm trying to go through my show notes here and figure that out. Geez, I don't. It's not in my show notes, but I know, I want to say it was 5 years ago is when it was initially released.
On
But
StarWars.com. On
yeah,
StarWars.com. Huh, yeah.
exactly. I think they first released it at a convention, then at San Diego Comic Con, then released it
Uh,
uh, online. But yeah, it was so a lot of people knew the story. A lot of people had seen it. A lot of people may not remember it, but it was seeing the final form actually made a bigger impact than watching it because I have the story reel version and I've watched the episode finished. Then I'd go back and watch it on the story reel, and they held true to the story, no doubt. But the watching the storyboard, it just lacked because of how it's you got the voices there and you got the some very rough animation, but because the animation was so rough, it did not have the feels that this episode had. And adding in the music, the fanfare, the phenomenal animation just adds to the emotional gut punch that you feel watching this episode and watching Echo's story.
yeah. Well said. Well said, my friend.
And it's really, really good. And I mean, we didn't even mention the fortune cookie. The fortune cookie for this episode: trust placed in another is trust earned. And we see that happen eventually as the episode goes on. Nobody's at the beginning of the episode, nobody's really sure if they could trust them. But by the time they're on the dreadnought, you have the Bad Batch trusting him. Tech is really trusting him. Um, and everybody they all start to congeal as a cohesive unit at that point, and everybody starts trusting everybody. Even Rex is trusting the Bad Batch more, and Bad Batch is trusting Rex more. And we see that kind of happening throughout the whole arc. It was just a phenomenal arc. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So David, let's jump into final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on Unfinished Business?
Absolutely. This episode earned an A. You and I talk about grades. I went with a B plus on the last one. Probably I should have moved to an A minus where you had it. I think you're more accurate in that than I was. And I put down hands down because of the action, the adventure, intrigue, humor, and feels. It had all of them. And it was incredible. Like we were just describing from beginning to end. In fact, something I was going to say in final thoughts is, how much I want to encourage people to watch the episode, wait a little bit, maybe the next day watch it again. And that's what I did. I watched it on the day that it came out and watched it again yesterday morning. And I noticed just some different things. For example, another piece of humor. When they're flying towards the Separatist dreadnought, Wrecker's like, am I going to get to blow something up? And Anakin's like, it's a stealth operation. He goes, oh, I hate that word. And so I just love that. And then I didn't pick up the foreshadowing that the first time I watched it that Tech says. He says, I got a feeling you're going to be able to do that. And so I just kind of smiled watching it again. Again, if you watch it 2 to 3 times, you're going to be really happy. And so picked up on all those things. I love the beginning, seeing Mace in action, seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's just incredible. The clones, the animation, and like I said, the feels at the end. I think a perfect ending to this arc. I mentioned to you, and you just said it, that fortunately I had watched these on StarWars.com, but without, fully voiced, but I just didn't really register them in my memory. And I was really glad that I didn't, because I really got to truly enjoy all 4 of these. And so that was really wonderful. And so just overall an A. I just am so impressed with this arc, and I'm curious how the next arc with Ahsoka, the Ahsoka Underground arc, is going to do compared to this, as well as the Siege of Mandalore. I'm sure these next 2 arcs are going to be just as good as this one. But we're what, a third of the way done? Is that right? Yeah,
That's right.
and
That's right.
it's amazing. I was just thinking, with 2 more episodes, we're going to be halfway through the end of season